You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
That's right. This is Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Landscape Studios. We're brought to you also by Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. Before we get back to our little case study of how not to manage a construction project, I want to let our listeners know that we've got a great resource for you. We put together a bi-monthly newsletter, and we've got over 23,000 subscribers. A lot of what you'll hear on the show, people that are contributors to our show, people that we have on are also contributing and writing to this newsletter. People say it's invaluable. It really helps them be able to understand property management, how to deal with people, how to understand the things that are important with their property. It's yours free. All you need to do is give us a call at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori, and she'll make sure that you start receiving that subscription. Again, it's free, and you can get it electronically or by mail. Now, we were talking, Tony, before the last break here about this case study on how not to manage a construction project. This association, condominium association, 100 units, the city officials came in and said there are some really major and significant deficiencies, code violations in the construction of nearly all of the 100 units. The estimated cost, $1 million.
Okay.
Lot of money. And
so here's a big project for the board of directors to deal with.
And here's, folks, what one homeowner association did. And again, we're going to say, don't do this at home. Don't do this if you're on the board.
Yeah.
What's the first thing? Even though we say everything was wrong, there's a couple things they did.
This blogger said they did do a couple things right. It sounded like it looked like they started out on the right foot, didn't it?
Started out excellently.
Yeah.
Yes. The board began when the construction issues were identified. The board engaged an engineering firm to help them define the scope of the necessary repairs and to develop a plan and specifications for the project.
You know what? More boards should do that with more projects, not even your $1 million projects. Let's talk about your $5,000 projects, your $10,000 projects. Get an expert to develop the scope.
Yes.
And the specifications.
Yeah. I mean, that's so important on so many many areas.
Yeah.
Now, that's really a best practice that we highly recommend. The board also consulted with their attorney. Another good practice. However,
good idea. Oh, okay.
However, they consulted with the attorney, but they ignored the attorney's advice.
Oh.
Now, I guess I should put a proviso here because, the professionals that an association management or that a homeowners association has are going to be their CPA. Mm-hmm. An attorney, the property management company, that the firm that is managing their property,
and the insurance company.
And the insurance company. There you go. So you've got four professionals who have a good deal of information and knowledge and can be a very valuable resource. And it's not that you have to obey or listen to and do everything that they do each and every time they say something. Mm-hmm. But if as a practice you find yourself not doing what they say, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I would venture to say it might be, it very well could be the case of the people on the board, you know.
I agree. If you're going to ask for your legal advice and pay for legal advice, and you should.
And then
you should.
Yeah.
You should be ready to follow that legal advice. Don't you think it exposes a board to more liability as well if they get a legal opinion and then ignore it?
I think that's a very good point to make.
That's what I used to advise boards. Okay, it's a good idea to get this legal advice, but just keep in mind then that you should abide by the legal advice.
Well, and so I think the attorney had made some recommendations, but
Okay.
here's what the board did not do.
Okay, here's where you get on the worst practices list.
That's right.
Okay.
So the board says, okay, we got this huge project. We got the scope. It's
Right.
about $1 million. So the board levied a special assessment to finance the project without providing the owners in the association any specifics beyond a threat to say, we're going to sue owners who failed to pay this special
Yow.
assessment within 30 days.
Yow. So there's $1 million project, 100 owners. I'm not good with decimals. How much money is that per owner? $10,000?
Yeah. Basically.
Or $100,000?
Yeah,
No, yeah,
$10,000.
$10,000.
Yeah.
So here you go. Here's the bill, $10,000. We need it in 30 days.
Yeah.
That's what they told their owners.
Yeah.
And how did the owners react
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they're saying, well, let's sit down and talk about this.
Here, let me write you a check.
Yeah. So no advance warning, no explanation of why
Yeah.
the construction work was needed, what the project would entail, how long would it take, how it's going to be managed, who's going to be doing the work. A lot of questions that people want to know about
Of course.
their own home.
Of course.
And so
Reasonable questions.
yeah, so they ignored the owner's complaints and their demands for transparency. The board took the position that because they did not need owner approval to proceed with the project, and that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
board members do have can
Rights
obligate the
based-
association.
Based on what their documents
Yeah.
say, right?
So they had no need to discuss the project and its financing or keep owners informed in a meaningful way. I really disagree with that.
With that approach. And you've said this many, many times before.
Yeah.
So your documents say, board members, that you have this power. Gene, does
Yeah.
that always mean you should wield that power without thought for anyone else?
Yeah, you would think, even if you want to do away with the idea about I don't want to spend the time to let the other owners know what's going on. How about for the selfish reason, do you want a board member? Do you want a better life? Do you want a life that is less ugly month to month?
Less
because
stressful.
Less stressful? Then
Exactly. There's some self-serving reasons why you could have handled this differently.
that in and of itself you would think would be enough.
So you have said many, many, many times, just because the documents say you can pass rules and regulations without members' approval, you can assess money up to usually a ceiling of some kind, although I've seen associations that had no ceiling. This one apparently didn't. Even though you can do that without the approval of all your members, doesn't mean you shouldn't be communicating with them constantly. Number one, in respect to rules, find out what their wishes are.
Exactly.
Do they want to ban all dogs? Do they want to ban all parking on the street? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't just arbitrarily come up with rules. In this case, this is unconscionable that they would slap an assessment and a demand for payment without even discussing the issues with their homeowners.
Let's remember the golden rule. Let's put the shoe on the other foot. You know, if you board member were not on the board and someone just came to you and said you owe $10,000 in 30 days, aren't you going to ask a question or two? You know,
yes.
And so and for the board, why would you put yourself through this kind of agony when it's not necessary?
Yeah.
One of the benefits, even though it takes longer to talk to people, and they might have had 3, 4, 5 different special meetings before a project like this gets started. It gives a chance for the homeowners in this association to ask questions. We did this with another association that had been where people had been really ugly and mean towards the board in a condominium association for years, distrustful of the board and how money had been spent.
Uh-huh.
And so this association was looking at spending almost $750,000 for necessary project work. Well, we sat down with the board. We talked. We ended up having about 4 or 5 different special meetings.
Sure.
And then things that were written and sent out.
Sure.
Took the time to answer questions. Do you know that association had 80% approval of everybody who said, yes, we want that project done?
Yeah.
And
amazing.
I remember going to City Hall to do some things to finally get that in place. There were people who were there. There were people that stood up. There were people that clapped their hands. A far cry from this scenario that's
reaction.
taking place. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, what else could go wrong with an association that thinks that they know a better way to manage a construction project? Well, there's a whole lot more, and we'll go over that after this next station break. So don't go away. You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280, The Patriot.